So my background's architecture.
Of course it is.
Yeah. So naturally, I'm a winemaker.
Makes total sense to me.
Yeah. I grew up in Texas, and I went to Syracuse to, experience different seasons. It was really just very cold. But earned my Bachelor of Architecture degree, moved back to Dallas, and was practicing architecture at a small firm. And in 2009, I started working part-time at a boutique wine and cheese shop. So this was during the recession. At the architecture firm, we worked primarily with private developers. And so, pretty kind of immediately, they were like, oh, all projects are on hold. So I started working part-time at a wine and cheese shop. And after a couple months was promoted to manager. And after another couple months, the wine buyer left. And I was like, well, I'll do it. And I grew up with my parents enjoying wine, but didn't have any knowledge or formal education or training. And I just enjoyed it. And I had learned a lot while I was there, and I enjoyed pairing the wines with cheeses. And so I took over the wine buying program for about 5 years. And then I moved out to Napa on a bit of a whim. I had been out here with some friends on a birthday trip, and while I was here, visited wineries that I sold the wines, and I just loved being here. It felt right. And so I went back to Texas, and about 3 weeks later, packed up my car and drove out here. While I was out here on the birthday trip, I was at Ladera, and actually they were looking to hire for their hospitality team. And so I ended up meeting with Ann and Nicole Stotesbury. And the day before I was leaving to drive out here, I got a phone call from Nicole with a job offer. So I excitedly accepted it. It had a little security with moving out here, knowing that I would have a job. So I moved out here, worked at Ladera on the hospitality side for about a year. During the first harvest that I was out here, I was super curious. I was always asking the winemaker questions, and I would go in on my days off just to help out in the cellar. And so I would dig out a tank or do punch downs or clean something. And I really enjoyed it. And it gave me a better understanding. And while I was running the wine and cheese shop, I became a certified sommelier through the Quartermaster Somms and a certified specialist of wine. So I had this, knowledge, winemaking knowledge, when I would talk to people about the wines and about lees stirring or punch downs versus pump overs, but seeing it and actually doing the work myself, every day was a light bulb moment. The following year, the owners are very supportive of, follow your passion, follow your interest. And so I moved over to the production side for harvest in 2015. So that was my first harvest, and I still loved it. I wanted to continue working in winemaking on the production side. So I went to New Zealand and worked at Elephant Hill in the Hawke's Bay, and went back and forth for 3 years and would do 6 months here working at Ladera, 6 months there, returning to the same wineries, which was important to me because I was able to learn the vineyards, learn the winemaking styles, and be able to come back the next year and taste what I had worked on the year before.
We're losing our lights.
We are losing our lights.
I'm going to cut in here real quick. We have a little lighting issue. These are motion-activated lights, and there's nobody moving around down there. So for our audience, wonder if they're going to kick us out of the bar here. It's not going to happen. So I'm sorry I had to interrupt you, Julie. So why don't you go ahead and pick up where you left off?
No problem. So working back and forth between Ladera here in Napa and Elephant Hill and Hawke's Bay. And after the 2017 vintage here with Ladera, the following spring, I joined the Paul team. So I was at Paul for 3.5 years as assistant winemaker. And after Paul I was assistant winemaker at Kerr Cellars, and then joined the team here in June. I came on, joined the team in mid-June of this year, 2022. I think there's a couple things that go into it. So I actually met Pam several years ago. I was introduced by a mutual friend, and we met and talking about winemaking. She gave me some great career advice, and we've kept in touch since then. And I think having that relationship beforehand is incredibly beneficial. She's an amazing person, an amazing winemaker. I have so much respect for her, and I know that I have so much I can learn from her. And so I think that, to me, it's impressive what she has built here. And so, like, learning that, understanding that, having the respect for that, and then over time, you know, just continuing to improve it. 2022 was we had, every harvest has its challenges. This year it was a crazy heat wave, heat dome situation. But aside from that, you know, it's a new vineyard, new to me, right? So new facility to me, equipment, some of the equipment I was familiar with, some of it's new equipment, learning the vineyard, all of that is a great and fun and exciting challenge in itself. And then with the crazy weather, I mean, we had our 5-day average the week after Labor Day was 117 degrees. And one day we hit 120 degrees on property.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, it was hot.
Yeah.
It was hot. And nobody really knew, how does this affect the vines? You know, there was some speculation. So the following week, I didn't pick anything during the heat. It was getting, I mean, at night it was still in the 70s. And so just monitoring the vineyard every day, still the canopies looked healthy. And the following week, the vineyard was starting to show signs of shutting down. And so Pam, I mean, a great resource, right? We were talking and like, what's the best decision here? And the best decision was to pull everything in. And so I put together a plan to pick out the entire vineyard that week. It ended up being 3/4 of our entire vintage that we processed in 6 days. We broke the record of maximum tons processed in a day, I think 3 days in a row. So it was pretty intense. And I think one of the benefits of having that challenge as my first harvest here is that you learn the capacities of the facility. You learn like where you can push it, what's going to work and what's too much. And so I think now having that knowledge, you know, next year and, you know, many vintages to come, knowing that like, well, if we need to do this, like if we need to process 14 tons in a day, we can do it. It's a long day, but we can do it. Our website is crockerstarr.com.
No and.
No and.